Good afternoon, City Church family. I've been thinking about Sunday's sermon and the verses we covered. Matthew chapter 5:5. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. One of the ideas that Ryan talked about was having a right view of oneself, a kingdom view. And regardless of what we have or what we don't have in the world's viewpoint, the truth is we're all in spiritual poverty. Right? We have this great spiritual need. And that's why the first two Beatitudes come right before this one. Right? When we realize we're poor in spirit and when we start mourning our own spiritual condition apart from Christ, right, then being meek and humble is really the only possible path forward. You know, I've been going to church for a long time, since I was a little kid, and someone once told me, they talk about this idea of meekness or humility and this right view of oneself in different ways. And one of the ways that I heard it described was that I need to take myself off the throne and I need to put Christ in his rightful place on the throne. Someone said that I needed to empty myself or die to myself in order to be filled with the Spirit. And then more recently I heard the phrase, I am second, which sort of describes our place, that it helps people remind themselves of who's first, right? If we're not first, then someone else is. So all these ideas and all these statements, they sort of hint at that same message, that we got to view ourselves rightly in this new kingdom view in order to be part of the kingdom. And so I guess for me, I really struggle with this a little bit. I just don't do it that well when it comes down to application and the moment-to-moment living, daily stuff. So one of the things that, I start out fine in the morning. Jesus is on the throne, he's Lord, I'm his servant. But then by lunchtime, I'm sort of living like a spiritual pirate. I'm just trying to take everything I need or everything I want, and there's not really any room left for Jesus or for anybody else. So applying this new kingdom view, it comes down to one thing for me when I can really seem to get it to work right. And that one thing, if I'm doing this one thing right, then I don't seem to struggle as much, and things sort of fall in line in my whole kingdom world. And but when I find myself struggling, it's usually because I've gotten away from this one thing. And the one thing for me is really a question, and that question is this: what story am I living in? From the world's perspective, I'm at the center of the story. Everything's about me. It's about my happiness. It's about my bank account, my joy, my activities, my comfort level. But really, that's an incredibly small story to live in. Right? In that story, I'm the main character. All the things going on in life around me, they just don't seem to fit in all the time. If I get a disturbing phone call, if something goes wrong with my family, I get bent out of shape real quick because, how dare anyone, including God, interrupt my story? It's my story. I'm at the center. So me trying to live my happy little life, it tends to become this huge exercise in frustration and disappointment. And I might say spiritual things like, God's will be done, or we just can't know, why bad things happen to good people. But inside, I'm secretly angry because why would God allow things to go poorly for me? After all, I'm one of his children, right? And then when things are going good, like when my little small story is working right, what I really find myself feeling more often than not is just boredom. The story's just too small. My heart wants to be part of something so much bigger. I get blasted by the hordes of boredom when I get stuck in this small story. I tend to binge on food, Netflix, anything to numb me from the pain. I feel like inside my life is just not working out the way I want it to be, right? It's not following my way. And it's really a broken story. It's a broken reality, and it's really just a lie. That's small story living, friends. And so the truth is, you can never really follow Jesus if you keep your small story. You just can't, right? Peter had to leave his fishing business. James and John had to leave their father in the boat. Paul had to let go of his plans to be the top Pharisee, right? Even Moses had to leave Egypt and go live in the desert, right? Simba could never become king if he didn't let go of Hakuna Matata. Right? We need to embrace this larger story, the one God is really telling, right? His story of restoration of all mankind to himself. In this story, we're not the main characters. Right? God is at the center. He's the one who's furthering his kingdom that was started 2,000 years ago. In this story, there's a real villain, right? It's out to steal, kill, and destroy. But our faith is in the one that came to give us life and life to the full. And we also have a part in this big story, right? We're not just bystanders. We get to partner with the God who made 100 billion stars, right? 10 trillion galaxies in the universe with 100 billion stars in each one. That same God wants us to help him finish his restoration mission, right? It's time to take our place. You see, it's already late in the story. We're in the final act, and there's so much on the line. We already know how the story ends, but it's not over yet. Our lives can make the difference, right? But only if we take our rightful place. If you don't know who you are in the story, you'll miss your cues. Right? You'll wander off, the enemy will hunt you down, pick you off. Right? There's no room for boredom in this new story. Every day, life and death, every day. Right? And we get to finally let go of the small story stuff, right? Our job isn't to fight with worldly swords anymore, right? We don't have to end poverty, and we don't have to bring about social justice. Do you realize how trivial an election is in the grand picture of God's story of restoring mankind? Think about it. In the grand picture, it's almost a don't care, right? No election outcome is ever going to be big enough to change God's trajectory. Right? We all want to see peace. We all want to see justice. We all want there to be no more tears. But that's not the chapter that God is reading right now. That's the next chapter. Right? We don't get to choose our chapter. Right? All we get to do is take our place in the chapter we've been given. Right? We need to keep our eyes and our hearts and our lives on bigger things, on heavenly things that God is up to in this chapter. Let God's sovereignty take care of all the details. Right? He's the author. He knows his job. And he knows every single hair on every single person. So let him deal with the details. That's not our job. Right? We don't know, and we aren't meant to know every single part of all this daily stuff. Our job is to stay connected to him, to align ourselves with him, right? To draw close to the vine and to get the life that we need to live in the Spirit every day. If we don't stay connected, we can never become the salt and light we were supposed to be. If we don't get his life, then we can never be his hands and feet to those around us. And if we don't think about his will, then we'll never consider it in the daily decisions. Right? Our job in this chapter of the story is to be messengers of hope in a dark hour in history. Right? Living in the right story is how we can stay humble. It's how we can live out that meekness that he's talking about, when we can really say and we can really believe in our hearts that it's not about me. That's how we'll inherit the earth. When we live with kingdom focus, right? When we decide that we're not going to let the small stories of our lives rule over us anymore. If you really, really want to see the world change, then no more small story living, friends. God bless.